Hello, podcast listeners. First up, thank you so much for listening to and supporting the podcast. We really, really appreciate it. We love doing it and we love getting the amazing comments in from all of you. Just a quick reminder that the Your Success book is out now on amazon.co.uk and amazon.com. It's currently available in both paperback and Kindle, and the audiobook will be coming out in 2019. Head to tiny.cc/yourbook to check it out. That's tiny.cc/yourbook to check it out. Now, on with the podcast.
Welcome to Your Success Podcast. We give you actionable insight and stories behind real-life success wherever you go. Here are your hosts, Angelos and Mo.
The following episode is our chat with David Kemp from DRK Planning, who we chatted to about the importance of using a planning consultant to maximise value in your developments. Enjoy.
So, warm welcome to David Kemp.
Thank you.
And today's talk is how to use planning consultants to increase your returns. So, first of all, David, why should a developer use a planning consultant at all?
Well, it's a bit like anything. If you want a job done, you need to go to the people who are experts in their field and are practiced in doing this on a regular basis. Now, planning in particular is a very complex field. And depending upon what you're working on, it can involve a lot of time, it can involve a lot of money as well, and you need to be able to manage both, the risk of the time and the money. And as planners and planning consultants, we are generally very, very experienced in being able to do that for our clients and also to be able to test the planning system as they go on as well. So you're not immersing your whole body into the planning experience straight away, from which you might get an awful shock. You're tiptoeing in, and doing it bit by bit, chunk by chunk, in a way that makes sense for the risk that you're prepared to bear on your shoulders. Now, there are different planning consultants, and there are people with different experience, and we all are moulded by our experiences and our environments in different ways. For my part, my experience has been very mixed. It's been a mixture of chartered surveyor, planning consultancy. I actually had a stint in agency and valuation, would you believe it, many, many years ago as well, when I started off in a Mayfair practice, GVA Grimley, many, many years ago. I then became a barrister and then a solicitor, and I practiced in local authorities. I've acted as a senior or principal planning lawyer for about 10 to 12 local authorities, mostly around London, but some outside as well, and also in private practice as well as a solicitor, and then run my own practice for about the last 10 years out of a total of about a 20-year career in planning as well. So you bring all of that together, then it's quite a very good toolbox to be able to reach into and pull out a few handy hints, strategies, and tips for your clients, for your investors, to help guide them through the process.
And people say, oh, I've done it before, I'm going to do this myself, I'm going to save on the fees and things like that. Have you got any horror stories of where people have thought like that and not used a planning consultant and it's gone wrong?
Yeah, they usually come unstuck.
Yeah. Whereabouts do they usually come unstuck?
Well, there are different scenarios and different situations. One particular case where many of your listeners, some of them may have been involved in residential conversion. So they've taken a house, or it was a building that was divided into self-contained flats, and then tried to divide it into HMOs. And it may not necessarily be the client who's doing it, but they're trying to save costs by getting their builder or their architect to do it. And before you go on a journey, you need to know where you're starting off from. If you haven't got, it's like going out for a walk. If you start off put the pin on the wrong point of the map, then every mistake you make from there on is compounded.
Yeah.
So the guys who were dealing with this in the first place didn't know what their starting point was. They didn't know, in planning terms, to translate that, they didn't know what the lawful use was and then how to implement that. So I'm not going to go into it on this podcast, but there's a general confusion and a lack of understanding between what is an HMO and what is a self-contained unit. And so many people have these small studio units, and they put not just a bathroom in there behind the studio itself, but they'll also put a kitchenette in there. Once you have all the facilities for modern living behind that door to the studio, you've made a self-contained unit. Yeah. And so instead of having 2 separate HMOs over 2 floors, one of 5 beds and one of 6 beds, but in each case sharing a kitchen, kitchen on the ground floor, kitchen on the first floor, there were 9 self-contained units. Right. The officers then undertook enforcement action, and the problem was that having undertaken the breach of planning control by law, that means that they cannot simply take out the kitchen units and do what they wanted to do. They have to strip everything back out, go back to the C3 use, because it's what's called an intervening breach. The moment there's an intervening breach, you lose the permitted development rights you had for the previous use. So it costs them. I think in the end, the owner and my client gave up in the end. We tried several different avenues. We took counsel's advice. We went through all manner of appeals, so all sorts of lessons learned from it, but it cost upwards of £50,000 in nearly 18 months to go through that whole process. So if you don't know what you're doing, then good luck to you, quite frankly.
Wow. I imagine their contingency budget was a little bit stretched at that point.
I think they were way beyond their contingency budget. Yeah.
So if they'd engaged you sooner, or you or someone similar sooner in the process, they would have known where they were starting out from, what they could and couldn't do.
Well, absolutely. I mean, I put a post up this morning on LinkedIn about due diligence. And, I get approached more and more now, I think probably because of the state of the market. It may be also there are new planning rules that have come out recently, changes in the National Planning Policy Framework, etc. I'm getting approached more and more now to help developers and investors out on due diligence pre-contract, even pre-offer, which is a good point at which to be advising them, because I've had situations before where my clients were in situations where we've actually acted as the developer, brought a site to the attention of investors. Investors have got very excited about it. Then we started digging a little bit more, and it came to a point. I can think of one particular deal which was about a £6.5 million purchase price. It was a commercial conversion for about up to 70 units. And it's a great scheme. But after looking into it further, I advised the client in that particular case, pull out the deal, because you're going to fall foul of some natural habitats regulations, which is going to make it very difficult to follow through on this permitted development scheme. And although they were very disappointed about that, the way I look at it is I've just saved my client £6.5 million plus all the costs, and also the hassle and the aggravation. I know of one particular developer who then went on, this was about probably 2 years ago, who went on and bought that development. But they may even have announced it on social media, as people tend to do these things. 2 years down the line, they still haven't got planning for it, for the very reasons we identified in the first place. So, to look at it very.
We just had Ian Fowler in from Savills, and he was saying, talking about Red Book valuations, and it's not always what you want to hear, but it's in the best interests of the client.
Yes.
Was it bats or newts?
Oh, it was something called Sites of Alternative Natural Green Space. It's basically down in the southeast. If you're quite close to natural heathland or upland, there are regulations on whether or not you can convert, sometimes above a certain number of units, usually about 10, but a lot of discretion at local level where they draw that line, to residential, because they basically don't want, or they're trying to control the number of people walking their dogs on the natural heathland and upland. So a lot of this comes from the conservation and habitats regulations, which some people don't realise is actually read into the General Permitted Development Order under Article 3. So it becomes part of that. And it's a very fine distinction, because actually you can get prior approval, because I've had people come up to me and said, well, it doesn't, so much for what's called SANG, Sites of Alternative Natural Green Space. I've still managed to get PD. Fine, you've got the prior approval certificate, but you can't occupy development unless you've conformed with the habitats reg.
Big distinction, right?
Well, it's about as useful as a chocolate teapot, quite frankly. I mean, what's the point in getting the PD if you can't occupy it?
Wow. And how much of what you do is having the local knowledge, and then it's sort of national framework versus local policy? And do you operate nationally, or how do you operate like that?
The father of the planning system, often regarded as the father of the planning system, Sir Desmond Heap, once commented that planning without the law is just wishful thinking. And what he meant by that, as it's explained to me by older and wiser heads, is that when you are operating the planning system, you're operating with a legally defined framework. So you need to understand that legally defined framework because, of course, when you come up against the cold face of negotiations with the council, you need to be able to understand how to run those negotiations, what the limits of a reasonable case are that you're putting, and also what the limits of a reasonable case are that they might put as well. So, you can advise a client, you can also look at whether or not there may be fallback positions you can take advantage of, and you can argue a stronger case with the council, and so on and so forth. So appreciation of that legal framework is massively important strategically in terms of operating your negotiations. But within that, there's a massive amount of grey area. There's the politics, there's the policy. There's also, it's a people business. It's also about building relationships and an awful amount of perseverance and determination. So, it's a matrix of all of those factors, really.
Wow.
So, David, this podcast is all about success. We love celebrating success. And as such, we ask everyone, what does success mean to you?
Oh, very good question. From a personal point of view, me and our family, we've often defined it in terms of health, wealth and happiness, really. Sort of break it down to that. Health is a massive factor because you can have all the money in the world, but if your mother or your father has gone through the big C, my mum suffered from cancer. Thankfully, she's over it as well. But at least for the time being, please God, many years ago, it can really put everything into perspective. And I've been through situations as well. I mean, I lost my job in the recession. As a lot of law firms, particularly property departments and law firms, they imploded in the recession. So it really puts everything into perspective. And when you've got family and you've got your health around you, you are thankful for an awful lot of things. So yes, we all want to be successful in our businesses, but it's a lonely world out there if you haven't got that love behind you as well, and that love and support behind you, which is extremely important. But of course, also determined to succeed. I mean, I run a business whereby we operate and provide a service to developers, investors, and to the community. I've built up friendships and mateships through it as well. And it's immensely good fun. It can be very testing and trying at times, but success to me is also feeling a sense of fulfillment through those relationships and what we do to help the community as well. So that's from a personal level, crossing over into the business side of it as well. From a success point of view, we're looking to push that on higher and further and faster to the community. We have to adapt to new ways in which the community interacts. We're putting together a training course. It's not there intended to coach people how to be planning consultants, but it's amazing what happens if you sit down in a room with developers and investors and you walk them through your strategies. You're not teaching them how to be planning consultants, but you're teaching them how to see new opportunities, how perhaps to due diligence the opportunities in front of them. And there are all sorts of light bulb moments that you see go on around the room. And we thought it would be a damn good idea if we ran an 8-week webinar-based course on that, which was strategy-led, fair bit of tactics dropped in, nothing too heavy, and it's our sort of our AAA development blueprint, if you like, at taking people through how to assess, how to action, and how to apply planning strategy all the way through as well. So hopefully through that we can be more successful, and we can help the development community be more successful.
Fantastic. That was one of the best answers I think we've had in terms of what does success mean to you as well. Obviously, everyone's is different, but I think the importance of family and health is can't be underestimated.
Depends on where your expectations start as well.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah, fantastic. So, how do people get in contact with you and and find out more about that webinar series?
Well, they can get in contact with me either through email at david@drkplanning.co.uk. It's all lowercase, no breaks. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. My company's on Facebook, DRK Planning Ltd on Facebook. So, by all means, reach out to me. Mobile number 07711 672 185. But usually email is the best way to get in touch with me or through Facebook.
Yeah, brilliant. And we'll put all your details in the episode as well.
And where can people find out more information about the webinar series that you're running?
So the webinar series we'll be promoting through Facebook and through LinkedIn over the next few weeks. Say from next week, what we're going to be doing is 4 free 15-minute webinars, content-based webinars about what we are promoting, about what we're doing. And then people will be invited to join an online mastermind, sales mastermind, for about 60 to 90 minutes to give you more information and give you an indication as to how we can all work together and how we can help to benefit your schemes going forward.
Brilliant. Fantastic. Some great insights there, David. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having me.
Cheers.
You have been listening to Your Success Podcast. Click subscribe for more incredible content. More details can be found at www.yoursuccesspodcast.com.